Released from 20 years of solitary confinement, an alcoholic advertising agent has 84 hours to unravel the mystery of his imprisonment and save his daughter. In 1993, Joe Doucette arrives at work where his secretary informs him of a call from his ex-wife. The advertising agent proceeds to his office where his boxing-obsessed boss, Bernie, says that the survival of their advertising firm hinges on the upcoming deal with Daniel Newcomb. Shortly after, Joe receives a call from his ex-wife Donna, who angrily reminds him that it's their daughter's third birthday. An argument ensues when he dismisses its significance, claiming that Mia won't remember whether he's present or not. That night, the agent closes the deal with Daniel, crediting it to Judy. When Daniel steps away to take a call, Joe misinterprets her help as romantic interest and flirts with her. This derails everything, leaving the advertising agent in shambles. After drowning his shame in alcohol, Joe wanders into Chinatown. He purchases a squeaky Buddha for his daughter and stumbles towards his friend's bar. Unfortunately, his friend Chucky turns him away and he walks into a woman with a yellow umbrella. Soon, Chucky regrets his decision, but finds only a squeaky Buddha left on his doorstep. Joe wakes up in a motel, and after using the toilet, he looks for the phone but finds a change of clothes instead. Anxious, he opens the curtains, but there's only a fake window behind it, and when he tries the door, it's steel with no handle. Panicking, he bangs on the door, but no one responds. Before long, he becomes conditioned to expect food when the fake window's scenery changes. Frustrated, he tries asking the food guy why he's being kept, but he's unceremoniously shoved back through the opening. Sick of the dumplings that he's always given, he discards it and chugs vodka instead. Soon, his only interaction is when receiving his regular meals, so he releases his frustrations by watching TV. Shortly after, gas fills the room, which knocks him out, and his fingerprints and various sources of DNA are taken. In 1994, Joe sees a news report accusing him of forcing himself on and subsequently eliminating his ex-wife Donna. Later, due to his need for socialization, he starts hallucinating that a bellhop is in his room. Desperate for companionship, he draws a face on a pillowcase using blood and happily cuddles it. In 1997, a rat gets in and Joe's glad to make a friend. He gives it a home and it soon gives birth. One day, Joe wakes up to find its nest empty and he laments the loss of his friend. When his meal arrives, he uncovers the silver platter only to discover his friend and its babies are inside. Overwhelmed, he beats his head against the door. Unsatisfied, he shatters a mirror and inflicts more harm to himself. When Joe wakes up, he's puzzled to see his injuries expertly tended to, the mirror gone, and a curious addition to his room. As he inspects the object, Cheney, the prison's proprietor, observes him through the camera. In 1999, Joe stumbles upon a TV show called Mysteries of Crime, a TV show featuring his alleged murder of Donna. The program interviews Mia's adoptive parents, Ken and Shirley Roos, followed by Mia's cello performance. This reignites Joe's will, prompting him to write letters to her, vowing to escape this unjust imprisonment. Joe begins a personal transformation, quitting alcohol and using TV programs productively. In 2000, Joe starts using pens to tattoo himself, one line for every year captive. In 2001, he begins listing down names that could be responsible for his abduction, as well as working on dismantling the tiles in his bathroom. Also, he takes note of the restaurant that supplies his dumplings. By 2013, Joe has loosened enough tiles for him to pass and squeezes through the crack. Confirming his escape, he backtracks for his letters, packing them in his pillowcase friend. However, he's captivated when Mysteries of Crime plays an interview with Mia, and he's torn between watching or escaping. Suddenly, smoke deliberately seeps into the room, making him fall unconscious. Sometime later, Joe wakes up inside a trunk at a field. He's clean-shaven, wearing a suit, and all his letters are with him. Alongside them are a purse of money and a smartphone. Its wallpaper is Mia and a timer of 84 hours. He looks around, spotting the same yellow umbrella from 20 years ago, and chases it. The holder, a woman, passes a football field where a jock accosts Joe in defense of the fleeing woman. Joe dismantles the jock along with his other teammates, resuming his chase. He spots the umbrella, but now it's a man named Johnny that's holding it. A volunteer nurse, Marie Sebastian, diffuses the situation, and Dr. Tom Melby rushes out, apologizing because Johnny is a kleptomaniac. Joe flees the scene, but Marie catches up to him, offering her business card in case he needs assistance. Night falls, and Joe seeks refuge with Chucky. He recounts his story, and his friend muses what he could have done to deserve that. Moments later, his smartphone rings, and a man with a British accent instructs him to examine his past. Before hanging up, the man wishes him happiness with his daughter, Mia. After the call, Joe takes out his list, and he and his friend spend all night looking up the names. When Chucky checks on him in the morning, he sees his friend collapse and calls emergency services. However, remembering that his friend is a fugitive, he sees Marie's card and calls her instead. After administering fluids, the nurse reports that Joe will be alright. Chucky retells last night's events and Joe's mysterious reappearance after 20 years. The owner excuses himself to open the bar, and Marie stays while her charge recovers. Drawn to his letters, she reads multiple letters before Joe wakes up. Furious at her intrusion, he snatches his letters away. Marie declares that she believes that he's been unjustly imprisoned and wants to make up for lost time with his daughter. Still, the fugitive intimidates her for knowing too much, but ultimately lets her go. Marie offers to connect him with authorities that could aid his search, but Joe refuses. Just then, he receives a text asking if he's begun his search. His first stop is the nursing home of his old boss, Bernie. Surprisingly, Marie is with him. Joe readies his weapon, but reconsiders upon seeing Bernie's addled state. During lunch, Joe recalls the takeout meals he was constantly served, prompting Marie to assist in searching for restaurants with the name Dragon. To her amusement, he samples various dumplings, but doesn't find the familiar taste until Marie departs for work. Finally discovering the right dumplings, Joe waits in the restaurant. Eventually, a regular with an unusually large order enters. Sensing a potential lead, he follows the delivery boy to the back, swiping a hammer and hijacking a bike. He trails the man's vehicle to a warehouse facility, infiltrating it. Dispatching the receptionist and his mark swiftly, he ascends via the elevator. Using the food to hide his face, Joe bypasses the secure entrance and eliminates the next receptionist. Cheney, annoyed by the delayed food delivery, emerges from his office, only to be knocked out. Regaining consciousness, the proprietor finds himself restrained to a table, where he's tormented until he reveals information. He confesses that he's merely the owner and is never privy to the identities of his clients. After a touch of salt, Cheney directs his tormentor to tape recordings with details of his imprisonment. Joe listens to it and hears the same British accent availed Cheney's service 20 years ago. Meanwhile, an employee stumbles upon the lifeless bodies, so he triggers an alarm. Moments later, Joe, armed with a box cutter and hammer, exits the room with Cheney as hostage. The fugitive releases his hostage to escape, but a gang of thugs stop him. He incapacitates the first wave with ease, but as he descends, soon more come at him. At the end of the second wave, a coward runs away after stabbing him. Joe, now armed with a bat, descends another level and faces off a final wave of thugs. Finally, he exits the building barely able to stand, where a car is waiting for him, and he's helped inside by a man with a British accent. At the bar, Chucky hears a horn blaring and rushes out to find his friend heavily injured. Meanwhile, at home, Marie is looking up the crime Joe is being accused of when she receives a call. Later, Joe wakes up with his injuries dressed. He eavesdrops on Marie, refusing Tom's offer to bring him to the hospital. They get into an argument and Marie storms out to smoke, while the doctor checks on the injured man's stab wound. Seeing no complications, he implores Joe not to hurt Marie and leaves. When the nurse comes back, she helps Joe put on his freshly cleaned suit. Heeding Tom's words, Joe drives Marie away, telling her to never come back. At the bar, Joe receives a call that quickly ends, prompting him to call back. Unexpectedly, the person he's calling is in the bar. Realizing this, Joe grabs a knife and charges, but he's easily subdued by the man's companion. Chucky attempts to help, but the other patrons are with the stranger as well. After taking his list and tearing it to pieces, the stranger informs Joe that he has Mia and proposes a game. The prizes are a videotape of Donna that can prove his innocence, which is briefly shown to the vengeful man. Another prize is a handwritten confession by the stranger, claiming all responsibility for the crime as well as Joe's imprisonment. All that plus $20 million worth of diamonds. The final prize is the pleasure of watching the stranger end his life. The conditions for winning is answering 2 questions within his remaining 46 hours. What is the stranger's name and why was Joe imprisoned for 20 years? Refusing to play, go to the police, or warn Mia will lead to her death. To prove the extent of his reach, he shows Joe a live stream of Marie in danger. The fugitive has no choice but to accept, and he hurries to her address. When he arrives, he's greeted by Cheney and his men. They subdue him and place him on a table, but right before the jailer can commence his revenge, his phone rings. Despite Cheney's claims that nothing can stop his retribution, he accepts a bag full of cash that was left by the door. Then, the men leave and Marie breaks down in Joe's arms. Meanwhile, the stranger and his companion are watching them through cameras planted throughout Marie's house. When his companion disrobes him and exposes the extensive scarring on his chest and shoulder, Joe looks through Marie's family pictures while she's in her room. Moments later, the nurse emerges with bags, announcing that she doesn't feel safe in her home anymore. Just then, Joe receives a call but is quickly hung up on. Joe remarks on the unique ringtone the stranger has, and Marie uses an app to determine that it's the anthem of Evergreen Academy. It's as old school, but there's almost no traces of it left on the internet. Instead, the nurse tracks down its previous headmistress, Edwina Burke. On their way there, Marie shows Joe a little intimacy, though he remains stone cold. They arrive at their destination and Marie is the one who faces Edwina. She's invited for tea after declaring that her visit is about Joe. Inside, the nurse states the fugitive's innocence, suggesting someone else from Evergreen is responsible. Meanwhile, Joe sneaks inside and heads for the bookcase. Edwina fetches tea and expresses her relief to hear Joe's innocence. While the women converse, Joe searches through his batch's yearbook, where he finds a likely candidate, Adrian Price. As Joe sneaks back out with the yearbook, Marie asks if there's anyone that might harbor a deep hatred for Joe, but the former headmistress has no suggestions. The nurse then asks what happened to the school, and Edwina reports that it was sold to a corporation, which subsequently left it untouched. Soon, Marie takes her leave and they drive to Evergreen, but it's guarded, so they elect to return in the cover of darkness. To pass the time, they check into a motel. Before taking a bath, Marie sends a picture of Adrian to Chucky, who immediately calls back saying he doesn't recognize the person, but will find out what he can. After Marie's bath, she offers to change Joe's bandage, and one thing leads to another. Elsewhere, the stranger is intoxicated as he watches the two's intimate moment unfold. Later, Chucky recalls their connection. He immediately calls his friend, reminding him of the harlot from their previous school, but he's currently busy with Marie. Unbeknownst to Joe, his smartphone is cloned, allowing the stranger, Adrian Price, to remove any trace of Chucky's call. Before long, Adrian appears at Chucky's bar, furious at having his sister called a harlot. That night, Joe and Marie break into Evergreen and go through the school records, learning that Adrian has a sister. Joe recalls that he made fun of the sister, Amanda, in the laundry room. Another memory of the woman was at night during a ceremony, where young adult Joe was retrieving from his alcohol stash and saw Amanda having an intimate moment with a man inside the campus greenhouse. Their search through the archives uncover what happened to the Price family after relocating. The family suffered a tragedy, leaving only one gravely injured young man. The puzzle pieces come together when Joe recognizes the man in the greenhouse as Arthur Price, the father of Adrian and Amanda. As they leave Evergreen, Marie discovers a package inside her car. A package containing a dismembered tongue. Back at the motel, Marie dissuades the fugitive from confronting Adrian, saying that regardless of the outcome, he still wouldn't see Mia. Undeterred, Joe makes the nurse promise that she'll stay inside the motel once he leaves before driving off using Marie's truck. Before confronting Adrian, Joe calls Tom, giving him directions to the nurse's location. Afterwards, he calls the mastermind and directions appear in the navigation system. Determined to find Mia, Joe walks in armed with a tire wrench, but the bodyguard is unprepared for his concealed box cutter. With the woman lifeless on the floor, Adrian reveals that Mia is nearby, but Joe must correctly answer the agreed-upon questions. Joe correctly identifies Adrian, and that his hatred is due to the gossip that spread regarding Amanda after the greenhouse incident. This may have led to the family's hasty departure in order to protect their reputation. Joe acknowledges that Arthur must have lived in constant fear of the truth catching up to them, leading to his desperate actions. Despite this, Adrian defends his father's character, asserting that what their family had was special. He recounts the events of that day when Arthur shot his entire family before taking his own life. However, Adrian was the only one who survived. Unsurprisingly, Joe is correct, successfully beating Adrian's twisted game. He's then escorted to Mia, going down a series of steps and corridors, during which the mastermind muses why Joe never asked why he was set free. When they arrive at the set of Mysteries of Crime, Adrian reveals that Joe was its only viewer. He stirs his memories by playing the interview of Mia's adoptive parents, reminding him of the day he vowed to change. Then, a cello starts playing, making a smile light the fugitive's face, and he sees a beaten Mia playing behind a glass enclosure. As Joe savors the moment, Adrian remarks how people readily believe whatever they see on TV. After which, he tells Ashley that she can go, and the woman wipes the makeup off her face before leaving. Puzzled, Joe calls her back, to which Adrian starts giggling. The mastermind reveals that Ashley is merely an artist. Joe unleashes his fury on the mastermind, demanding Mia's whereabouts. Unfazed, Adrian replies by urging Joe to contemplate why he was set free. Soon, Joe starts tearing up, and Adrian claims it's because deep down he knows the answer. Afterwards, Adrian plays family videos of Mia, explaining that it took 20 years to orchestrate the set of circumstances exactly for this moment. As the video plays, Adrian's masterwork is slowly revealed. Joe watches as his baby Mia grows into a woman, who reveals to be Marie. When the realization hits, Joe screams with anguish, while Adrian revels in the moment. As the father begs to be killed, the mastermind calls Marie, but he quickly hangs up. Adrian tells him this is why he was set free, so that Joe could experience what the Prices had and how devastating it was to lose it. The mastermind tenderly kisses Joe and takes out his gun. With Mia's childhood videos as the backdrop, Adrian ends himself, leaving Joe speechless. Afterwards, Joe sends Marie the majority of the diamonds, the supposed present for her 3-year-old self, and a letter. He expresses the happiness he felt with her and that he'll cherish that joy forever. However, they can't be together. The remaining diamonds are given to Cheney, and Joe lives his remaining years in his old solitary room. As for Marie, she uses the money and moves away, bringing with her the memories of Joe and the happiness they shared.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.